Acabamos de llegar al lugar donde va a comenzar la búsqueda del migrante desaparecido.
So from where we're at right now, we can see from left to right and right to left, a heavily wooded area denotes the border between North and South Korea. There are no fences, there are no barriers, and there are no walls that separate North and South.
زنایی که فقط باید سکوت کنن، هیچ کس نباید صدایشان رو بشنوه، صدای گپشان رو بشنوه. ما تصمیم گرفتیم که در اونجا باید صدامون رو به شکل آهنگ بیرون کنیم.
Just because we've got a disability doesn't mean that we are children. We are adults with hopes and dreams. Without sports, none of us would be here.
Inspiring short films from the BBC. Watch now on iPlayer.
Morning. Come and have a seat. Now, of course, I'm not going to go easy on you. There are some really big questions we've got to try and get answers to this morning. But I'll be fair, and we just want to hear what you've got to say. So, shall we get on with it?
We're rolling.
Here we go. Join me to hear from the biggest names inside and outside politics.
Sunday with Laura Koonsberg. Sundays at 9 on BBC One and iPlayer.
Hello and welcome to Newsday. Reporting live from Singapore, I'm Steve Lai. These are the headlines. The adult film star Stormy Daniels gives evidence in Donald Trump's hush money trial in New York. Israel says it has taken the Gaza side of the Rafah crossing as truce talks continue in Egypt. Long delays at airports in the UK due to an outage affecting passport e-gates at the border. And the world's biggest music competition, the Eurovision Song Contest, kicks off in Sweden. Hello and welcome to Newsday. It's 7 a.m. here in Singapore and 7 p.m. in New York, where former US President Donald Trump sat through lurid claims in court during his trial over an alleged hush money payment to the adult film star Stormy Daniels. Now, Ms. Daniels, who was giving evidence in person, went into explicit detail about her alleged sexual encounter with Mr. Trump, so much so that his defense called for a mistrial. And that was rejected by the judge. Mr. Trump is facing charges of fraud for recording the payment to Ms. Daniels as legal expenses. Our North America editor, Sarah Smith, has more.
Each day, Donald Trump waves to the cameras before heading to court. But this was no ordinary day in this extraordinary trial.
Mr. Trump, is this true?
Can you sleep with Stormy?
Today in court, he had to watch a woman who claims she had sex with him openly testify about it. Stormy Daniels was paid $130,000 by Mr. Trump to stop her going public with claims of a sexual encounter shortly before the 2016 presidential election. Just outside the courtroom, he insisted he shouldn't be on trial at all.
And the trial is a very unfair trial. It's a very, very unfair trial. The good news is they have nothing. Thank you.
The court was shown this photograph of Mr. Trump with Stormy Daniels as she described first meeting him at a golf tournament in 2006. The day she says they later had sex. It was at this golf course, she says, that Donald Trump sent his bodyguard to invite her to dinner. When she got to his hotel suite, she laughed at him for wearing black silk pyjamas, while he dangled the possibility of her appearing on his TV show, The Apprentice. When she asked about his wife Melania, he told her they slept in separate rooms. As Miss Daniels described having sex on the bed with Mr. Trump without using any protection, she was frequently interrupted by objections from his lawyers. Her testimony was so prejudicial, they argued, the judge should declare a mistrial. He agreed there were some things that would probably have been better left unsaid, but the case goes on. Ms. Daniels was asked if she hates Donald Trump when his lawyers cross-examined her. Yes, she said, as it all got very heated. He had to listen to her admit she had publicly called him an orange turd, and that she'd like to see him jailed, as she wants him held accountable. Before his lawyer directly accused Stormy Daniels of trying to extort the former president through the hush money deal. Earlier today, Mr. Trump posted on social media, "I've just recently been told who the witness is today. This is unprecedented. No time for lawyers to prepare. No judge has ever run a trial in such a biased and partisan way." He then quickly deleted it. He's already been warned by the judge. He could be jailed if he continues to post about witnesses in this trial. Sarah Smith, BBC News, New York.
In another case that the former president faces, a Florida judge has indefinitely postponed Donald Trump's criminal trial over his alleged mishandling of classified documents. The former president had been scheduled to go on trial on May the 20th, but the district judge said that was not possible because of the number of pre-trial motions before the court. A new date for the federal trial has not been set. Now, the United Nations says Israel is not allowing humanitarian aid and workers into Gaza through the Rafah crossing after its forces took control of the Gaza side of the border with Egypt. Now, Hamas has warned that the Israeli incursion there aims to undermine efforts to secure a ceasefire. Last night, Hamas announced it had accepted proposals drawn up by international mediators, but the deal was rejected by Israel as far from meeting its core demands. Paul Adams reports from Jerusalem.
A deal may now be tantalizingly close, but in Rafah, Israel's military pressure is relentless. Today, severing Gaza's last link with the outside world, the crossing point into Egypt. And raising their flag, sending an unmistakable message to Hamas. The noose is tightening. The sounds of approaching war echo among the displaced. Hundreds of thousands of Palestinians living in the sand against the Egyptian border or next to the sea. I don't know where to stay, Ahmed says. People are fleeing from Rafah, and I have my children with me. Gazans have been on the move since yesterday morning, heeding Israel's latest warnings, not knowing if the coming days will bring relief or despair.
After what we've witnessed, they've said multiple times that there will be a ceasefire, but we're frustrated and we have no hope. There's no big hope, only a small one.
For aid agencies already struggling to cope, the prospect of a full-scale Israeli operation in Rafah is alarming.
As the operation will progress, we will lose progressively more areas to the fighting. And I'm afraid that this will also affect our warehouses, health facilities, hospitals, and the very, very few sites where we have the ability to give medical support.
For the families of Israeli hostages, these are also moments of acute anxiety. John and Rachel's son Hirsch was abducted and badly injured on October the 7th. No sign of life until this Hamas video 2 weeks ago. His parents now just daring to hope.
When we heard the news that maybe there's a deal, we were cautiously optimistic, and we remain cautiously optimistic.
It's scary to have military actions going on. They're innocent civilians, including our son. We just need this to come to an end, and we need the mediators on all sides and the two main parties to just sit in the room and hammer this out and don't come out of the room without a deal.
Away from the quiet dignity of the hostage families, friends and supporters are determined to make as much noise as possible, demanding the government do more to rescue Hirsch and all the others. These Israelis protesting in the heart of Jerusalem tonight feel that a deal to end this terrible war has never been closer. And so as they protest close to the Prime Minister's official residence, their demands are becoming more and more urgent. Israel's defense minister says the Rafah operation won't stop until Hamas is eliminated or the hostages start to return. Talks are continuing, a successful outcome still far from guaranteed.
And with me in studio for more on this is Jean-Loup Saman, Senior Research Fellow at the National University of Singapore's Middle East Institute. Jean-Loup, great to have you with me in here again. A lot has happened in the last 24 hours, and now Israel is sending a delegation to Cairo for further talks, all the time while more military action is happening in Rafah. Do you think a ceasefire or some kind of negotiated deal is achievable?
Well, I think on this topic, the cautious optimism is the right expression. Clearly, I think we see some elements that tend to say that both sides, Hamas and Israel, are still considering a ceasefire. At the same time, there is a lot of tension regarding the latest revised proposal that the Israeli government didn't accept. There's a lot of uncertainty on the condition of the hostages, which could actually lead Israel to consider that the proposal is just irrelevant. So a lot could happen, but I don't think that we reach the point where a ceasefire is no longer relevant.
And what about Israel's actions in at the Rafah border, then the Egypt-Rafah border, where they now have control of the Gaza side of it? Is that going to have any sort of impact on the talks that are ongoing?
Clearly, I think it's actually a continuation of the negotiations by other means. I think the Israeli government is putting pressure, like it did in the past, on Hamas, and telling the Hamas leadership, if you do not accept our demands, we will go ahead with the operation. Having said that, the Israelis as well as the Americans have been very clear that what we've seen over the last days is not a full-scale operation. We didn't see a ground invasion of Rafah, but clearly what we saw is a lot of airstrikes, a lot of special forces entering Rafah. So this could be the beginning of a full-scale operation. So what I think will happen is if we see the collapse of the hostage negotiations, probably the offensive on Rafah will happen.
A lot of military activity seems to be focused on there at the moment, not so much in the rest of the Gaza Strip. Do you get a sense that Israel feels like it might be approaching its endgame here?
Yes, I mean, if we remove the Rafah issue from the whole picture, most of the operations inside Gaza have been decreasing clearly over the last months. The Israeli forces on the ground have been reduced. We're talking about just 2 brigades. So this is, in the worst case scenario, this is going to be the last chapter of the military operation. This could be a devastating chapter, definitely at the humanitarian level, but clearly we're not at the same point as we were like 6 months ago when the operation was just starting and the Israeli officials were talking about weeks and months of operation. Now, I think this is, no matter what happens, going to be the final chapter.
All right, Jean-Loup, we have to leave it there. Thanks so much for coming in and speaking with me today. Jean-Loup Saman, Senior Research Fellow at the Middle East Institute at the National University of Singapore. Now let's turn our attention to the UK, where airports across it are suffering a nationwide failure of passport e-gate systems. Now, passengers have been reporting long queues to get to passport control at airports, including Manchester, Stansted and Heathrow. The Home Office said it was working to resolve the issue. Now we can speak now to Laura Howes, who is stuck in a queue at Stansted Airport in London. She has arrived about an hour ago from Fuerteventura. Tell us then, get us up to speed with the situation where you are at the moment. We know you're coming back into the UK and you're having trouble.
Yes, I am. And actually, in the last 5 minutes, people actually broke through the barrier just here on my left to get through to passport control faster. They were then turned away again. But hundreds of people are inside this room right now. It's pretty wall to wall. There's not a huge amount of floor left, yet there are still flights arriving. So it's just getting busier and busier, and we don't have any answers or any additional information as far as I'm aware of yet.
Laura, it seems like frustration is growing amongst the passengers there, and the lack of information must be playing a part in that. Has no one been able to tell you, how long you're going to be or what they're going to be doing to help the situation? Sorry, we've just seen you knocked your camera over, unfortunately. But we've still got you.
No, that's okay. Yeah, somebody else knocked it over. Actually, it's so chaotic in here. Everybody's not really looking where they're going. People are just busy focusing on getting to the front. But the problem is nobody knows where they need to go. Nobody knows why there are so many delays. We know there's a nationwide issue, but we don't know what's causing it. We don't know how quickly it's going to be resolved. So people have realised they've missed the last Stansted Express home. People don't know when they're going to get to leave the airport, when they'll get to go to work, when they'll get to take their children home. So it's quite chaotic and quite distressing for a lot of people.
And Laura, are the airport services staff able to sort of alleviate any of the frustrations? Are they handing out water? Are they trying to take care of the people stuck in queues?
I've seen people handing out water to members of staff at the airport, but I haven't seen any passengers being handed water or being offered water yet. Children are being prioritised, but I would say that is being more encouraged actually by the people in the queue rather than airport staff themselves. You can see people taking great sympathy on parents with babies in their arms fast asleep. So people are getting through the queue slightly faster if they have children, but there's no guarantee that when they do get to the front of the queue that they'll be going anywhere.
And Laura, just quickly, I'm not sure if you'll be able to answer this, but are flights still arriving into Stansted where you are? Presumably, if there's a bottleneck forming, it's only going to get worse as more flights arrive.
Yeah. Well, I can confirm that behind me, where the trains take passengers from their planes to passport control, there was a train that's just pulled in the last minute. So that's a sign to me that there are still flights arriving. My flight, for example, was delayed, so I don't know whether there's more delays, but I can certainly imagine that there might be more flights to come, given one has just arrived in the last minute.
All right, thanks very much for that, Laura. I hope it clears up for you soon. Laura Hawes there speaking to us from Stansted Airport. Around the world and across the UK, this is BBC News. Now, the Ukrainian Security Service says it's foiled a Russian plot to assassinate President Zelensky. 2 colonels have been detained, suspected of passing on secret information to Russia's security agency, the FSB. Our Ukraine correspondent, James Waterhouse, says Mr. Zelensky has not commented on the plot.
Well, there's been no mention by President Zelensky in his evening address about this latest attempt or this plot against his life, which suggests how routine such attempts have become. But his intelligence service has been very keen to talk up these 2 arrests of 2 serving colonels in the country's security service, which is responsible for keeping officials safe. The allegations they face are lengthy, including being hired as moles by Russia's security service, the FSB, before the full-scale invasion, where there were meetings overseas, where there were large sums of money exchanged. It's alleged they tried to recruit some of President Zelensky and his top officials' security guards who might be willing to kidnap and kill them. It's alleged that they brought several weapons to Kyiv to carry out an attack, including anti-personnel mines, drones, explosives, and at the very least, this looks like quite the infiltration into President Zelensky's inner circle. But what the security service here are saying is that they've monitored it throughout, and they got ahead of it. But this is a wartime leader, we must remind ourselves, who is willing to travel around the country and who faces very real risks on a daily basis. I don't think he'll be put off by this latest attempt, but it just shows the attempts that Russia allegedly is willing to carry out alongside what it's trying to do on the battlefield.
Meanwhile, Vladimir Putin attended a familiar ceremony today as he was sworn in for the 5th time as Russia's president. Mr. Putin has been in power since the turn of the century and is now beginning an unprecedented new 6-year term after winning 88% of the vote. At a lavish ceremony in the Kremlin, he was unapologetic about invading Ukraine, although he conceded that Russia was going through a difficult period. Our Russia editor, Steve Rosenberg, was there.
In Russia, times change.
Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin.
But the leader stays the same. Vladimir Putin strode into the throne hall of Russian Tsars. The gold, the grandeur of the Grand Kremlin Palace matched the image he's cultivating of a modern-day Russian emperor. Vladimir Putin could have walked this with his eyes shut. After all, he's been down this way many times before. He is the longest-serving leader in Russia since dictator Joseph Stalin. This is Vladimir Putin's 5th term in the Kremlin. The oath? To serve the Russian people. And then, the leader who'd invaded Ukraine accused the West of aggression.
We're not refusing to speak to Western nations. It's up to them whether they keep trying to hold Russia back and continue their aggression and years of pressure on our country, or seek a path to cooperation and peace.
Peace? Here, they're not expecting that anytime soon.
The West needs a weak Russia that will fall apart. Putin is standing in their way. So they try to weaken Russia by attacking Putin.
We're in the war, and the war is serious, and we're fighting. And
you could stop it tomorrow, though, by pulling your troops out of Ukraine, no?
Of course not. We will never stop, because we're fighting for our people.
It's incredible to think that in the nearly quarter of a century that Vladimir Putin has been in power in Russia, America has been through 5 different presidents. Britain has had 7 prime ministers. Mr. Putin's supporters welcome the continuity as they see it, despite the danger that comes from having one man in power for so long with so few checks and balances. Then, outside, more pomp for Putin and more imperial symbols.
Putin thinks of himself now as Vladimir the Great, as a Russian Tsar. Everything now in terms of the symbolism, the way that he refers to himself, this Russia now forged in war for the future, is taking us back to these past patterns in Russian and Soviet history.
But it's not just in the Kremlin where you'll find President Putin. 70 miles from Moscow, Big Vladimir is watching you. Western governments called Russia's election a sham. But in the town of Kashira, what do they think of the man who was declared the winner? I like him, says Valentina. Putin does a lot for people. Our pensions aren't big, but he can't fix everything in one go. He's had 25 years, I say. But we don't know who'd come next, she says. Perhaps that's because potential rivals are in exile or in jail, leaving one man running Russia. Steve Rosenberg, BBC News, Moscow.
It's been revealed that Prince Harry will not meet King Charles during his visit to the UK this week. A spokesman for the Duke of Sussex said a meeting between father and son wasn't possible because of the King's busy schedule. Harry is in London to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the Invictus Games, which he set up to rehabilitate wounded or sick service personnel. Now, the Eurovision Song Contest, the world's biggest music competition, has kicked off in the Swedish city of Malmö. 15 countries have performed in the first semi-final. A warning in the following story, there will be flash photography and strobing lights. Now, Croatia, Ukraine, Finland are among the first 10 countries to have qualified for the grand final on Saturday, and Ireland's entry, Bambi Thug, has become the first Irish Eurovision Song Contest finalist since 2018. There'll be another semi-final on Thursday, where 16 more countries will compete. But the contest is taking place amid protests against the Gaza war. Former Swedish Eurovision contestant Erik Saade was not competing and had a keffiyeh symbol, commonly used by people who want to show their support for Palestinians, on his arm as he performed his 2011 entry Popular. Now, I spoke to Eurovision expert and journalist Callum Rowe, who's in Malmö, and asked him about the significance of this year's contest.
This Eurovision Song Contest, first of all, is the most and biggest watched non-sporting event on the entire planet. More than 150 million people, not only across Europe, but worldwide watch it. And it's been going for almost 70 years now. It's got longevity for a reason. People across Europe and indeed, like I say, the world love it. And it's a chance for people to come together and celebrate music and shared culture. So, yeah, it's not the biggest event in the world for nothing.
Yeah, and Callum, does this year feel different, though, perhaps to others because of the ongoing wars in Gaza and Ukraine? The singing competition hasn't been able to stay clear of politics, has it?
Yeah, Eurovision always does tend to kind of get itself tied up in politics, as best it tries not to. The fact that we're talking about the contentious inclusion of Israel shows that the headline just simply won't go away for contest organisers. I've been in Malmö for 3 or 4 days now, and I must admit I'm seeing more Palestinian flags than Israeli flags. That's one thing for sure. But I must admit I don't feel unsafe. There were some protests last week, some Quran burnings, and there's been some protests this week, and there are more protests planned later in the week. But the Swedish authorities seem to be on top of everything, and the Eurovision organisers might be mopping their brow at the moment because, like I say, things seem to be going off without a hitch so far.
And politics aside, then, tell us a bit about the first semi-final that's just taken place.
Yeah, we're just an hour or so after the first live semi-final. We've got another one on Thursday evening here in Malmö. But the first one, it's just great to have the music the centre of attention for 2 hours earlier on this evening. You mentioned Ireland's contestant Bambi Thug. They were sort of nowhere in the expectations of fans and experts and journalists and the bookmakers. And then they had their first rehearsal yesterday, and suddenly they became one of the top favourites to win the entire competition. Like we heard earlier, they haven't been in the final since 2018, so this is remarkable for Ireland. And it was just great to see everybody, like I say, coming together and celebrating the music. Croatia is another fan favourite, and the noise inside the arena tonight was almost unlike anything I've ever heard before at the contest.
And a reminder that second semi-final takes place on Thursday. Thanks for your company here on Newsday. Do stay with the BBC News, though. Our new look business show, Business Today, will be following on shortly, where our top story is all about TikTok and the social media giant's lawsuit to stop its ban in the United States. See you soon. Bye for now.
Hello. The weather has been gradually drying up over the past 24 hours or so, and we've got some more dry, settled weather on the cards through much of the week ahead, really. High pressure is going to be in charge over the next few days, but for the rest of the week, we will at times see weather fronts just trying to topple across the north of that high pressure. Could bring a little bit of rain at times across parts of Scotland, in particular, perhaps the north of Northern Ireland, but it'll be warming up here. Mostly dry elsewhere, though, with some spells of sunshine on the cards. So we are in for a relatively quiet few days of weather. We're likely to start Wednesday morning with quite a bit of mist and fog around, especially so for parts of eastern England, also perhaps Wales and the southwest of England. Could be some misty patches elsewhere. For most, they'll tend to lift and clear, so it'll brighten up. Some sunny spells, particularly for England and Wales. Just the odd isolated shower. More rain moving into the northwest of Scotland later on in the afternoon. So temperatures in the northwest under the cloud, only about 13 there for Stornoway, but up to around about 21 for the likes of Birmingham and London too. So there's that wet weather through Wednesday evening. Northern Ireland, northern and western Scotland seeing some outbreaks of rain. Further south, most places staying dry, but there should be some mist and some fog that's going to be forming again into the early hours of Thursday morning. But certainly mild, many places staying in double figures overnight. So more of the same on Thursday. High pressure still in charge, so a lot of dry weather, mist clearing away gradually. Lots of sunshine, I think, for England and Wales by this stage. There just could be the odd isolated shower. Again, a little bit more cloud across the north of Scotland. Temperatures in Lerwick only around 11 degrees, but for the bulk of the UK, we're looking at around about 18 to 22 degrees. And that warming trend will continue as we head into Friday too. So high pressure still very much in charge. I think by Friday we'll have less in the way of rain and cloud across the north of Scotland and quite widely across the UK in those spells of sunshine. Temperatures will be above 20 degrees. We could see 23 or even 24 down towards the southeast. Again, a little bit cooler, especially across the north of Scotland and the Northern Isles in particular. Now, heading into the weekend, it looks like high pressure will be setting out towards the east there. This weather front will just try and nudge in from the west by the time we get to Sunday. But Saturday certainly looking dry, fine, pretty warm for all of us. Just that chance of a few showers moving into the west as we head through Sunday. Bye for now.
I'm not sure I've actually said this before. I came off air and I cried. Wow.
A symbol of friendship to some, panda diplomacy to others.
That world has eaten up and spit out a lot of young and attractive guys.
There's always more to the story with our podcasts. Listen on BBC Sounds.
Welcome to breakfast.
Thanks for joining us.
Hello. You're going to have a great time.
Remember, Kev, you aren't getting any younger.
Sun up, I think, in about 10 minutes' time.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. You've been up there and looked down at us here. Right, let's go live to Westminster.
Today is going to be much colder than of late. We do want to hear your stories.
Oh, he does smell good, actually.
Arnold Schwarzenegger, thank you very much.
Start your day the BBC Breakfast way on BBC One and iPlayer.
Travelling can be so much more than a holiday.
It's about diving headfirst into new experiences.
And seeing the world with fresh eyes.
Where each destination tells a unique story.
And every encounter brings a new perspective.
Because all of these amazing places
are made so much richer by the people who live in them.
So unleash your spirit of adventure.
And join us for a deeper understanding of the world.
The Travel Show. Watch on BBC iPlayer.
TikTok swipes back. The social media giant files a lawsuit to stop a ban in the United States. And how a once polluted town is trying to become one of the greenest in Europe. Hello and a warm welcome to the first day of our new show, Business Today. I'm Steve Lai, coming to you live from Singapore, where it would probably be described as same, but different. Now, rest assured, our Business Today team is dedicated to bringing you the most latest and most relevant business stories of the day. And there's no better way to get you familiar with the new look and feel than to get on with the program and start with our top story. Now, the Chinese owner of TikTok has said it will sue the US government over a new law which requires it to sell the video sharing platform or be banned in America. The company has called the legislation an extraordinary intrusion on free speech rights. From New York, Michelle Fleury has more.
TikTok is hugely popular in America. 170 million people use the platform to communicate. Lawmakers aren't so keen. Congress and the Biden administration believe the app and its Chinese owners ByteDance could be a danger to national security. The argument goes that Beijing could commandeer it to surveil and manipulate Americans. So they've given the company until the day before the next US president takes office on the 20th of January to sell or face a ban here in the United States. TikTok, well, it's fighting back, challenging the constitutionality of the new law, arguing in its legal filing, for the first time in history, Congress has enacted a law that subjects a single named speech platform to a permanent nationwide ban. The company also says that it's not possible legally, technically or commercially to divest within that timeframe. Part of the challenge is that with 1 billion users worldwide, a lot of its content is actually available across borders, making it all on harder to unpick. The US Justice Department declined to comment, but here's what White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre had to say when asked about why President Biden continues to use TikTok for his political campaign.
So as it relates to the campaign and obviously other congressional members, they have to speak to themselves. The campaign has to speak to it. But we've been very clear, what this law is not a ban, it is a divestment.
TikTok CEO Shou Chu, who appeared with his wife Vivian Cao at the Met Gala last night, is hoping TikTok's other recent First Amendment victories in the US, like blocking the state of Montana's bid to ban it, will help it prevail again. Outside of the court,